lack thereof, I should
Lack
say.
thereof.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So we're just waiting on Miss Jessica, actually, and she's going to give her report first. So we'll wait because it's just now 3 o'clock. So, Eric, when are we going to get our guys to win our hockey?
You mean soccer?
I mean soccer. Gosh, I got hockey on the brain.
Hi, yeah, this is Jessica. I'm the 919 number.
That's what I thought, Jessica. How are you?
I'm good.
And you're driving, Jessica. So you know what? Since you are driving, we had you first on the agenda. If you want to go ahead and give us your report, and then if you have to jump off, we will at least have had your report there.
Okay, sure. So the Bourbon Focus Group met it was last week or the week before last maybe, and then we're meeting again this Thursday. We came up with some draft ideas for quick wins, short-term and long-term goals for the industry as it relates to COVID, and then also systemic racism. And, I think big picture consideration for us, in particular as it relates to some of our, physical facilities in Louisville, is that we really need to get on the other side of the Breonna Taylor decision and, all of the protests and people coming in from out of town and some of the different volatility downtown that's not letting us even partially reopen under COVID. So, we have a handful of distillers that are trying to keep visitor centers open, but it's a very small number of the overall group. And, they're closing on occasion, given some of the risks around some of the protests. So, for example, when the organization came in last Saturday, everyone closed down. Yeah. So that's kind of like a big picture concern for us in terms of getting back to business. And it makes it hard somewhat to come up with a plan until some of that is resolved. But with that said, we did come up with some ideas around various things. In particular, in the near term, we're definitely, looking at continuing how do we virtually bring the Bourbon Trail into people's homes because there are fewer people coming to us. We are in the industry all tracking who is coming to the visitor centers in Kentucky, and they're all within driving distance, really, within about a 500-mile radius. And so focusing on those demographics in terms of marketing campaigns and who we're trying to bring in, modifying things to create unique user experiences with smaller groups. So we're not doing the large group events anymore. And then on, addressing the systemic racism as it ties into some of the work we're doing with COVID, it's being very mindful of any type of marketing that we do, any type of social media campaigns, making sure that we're, not being tone deaf to the current climate and what's going on and what people are experiencing. In the bourbon industry, similar to most industries, a lot of us went silent on social media for the month of July. We were even talking about in the near term how we were going to address Derby. But how do we address Derby in a way to create some online bourbon events or whatever it may be, but then also do that in a way that brings in Black culture. So we were talking some around that and how we integrate that. And then just not looking at the COVID environment and then just looking at systemic racism as a whole, we were talking about ways to create internship opportunities and training opportunities within our industry to bring more diversity into the industry. The Kentucky Distillers Association in particular has just put together a DEI advisory panel. And so that encompasses 40 member distillers across the state, including all of those located here in Louisville, And so, we'll be working on very industry-specific recommendations with that advisory panel. But, really kind of focusing on how we can do community outreach, how we can make the bourbon industry more welcoming and more inclusive, and then also focusing on education and workforce pipeline opportunities.
Yeah, and
big picture.
All of you got everyone's notes. So thank you for that recap, Jessica. And you're a little ahead, already having another meeting scheduled Thursday. That's great. At that meeting, do you have specific goals that you want to achieve? Is it working on some of these, the virtual that you mentioned and creating unique experiences? Is that what you guys are going to be working on, or?
So I think it's more, we're going to take that initial kind of brainstorming list, which is what are in the notes there, and kind of refining that some. I'm still a little unclear on ultimately, like, what is the deliverable that we need to bring out of the focus group.
Yeah.
Because that will help guide us a little bit. I mean, do you want like the kind of list we pulled together? Are they looking for something more refined? It'd be helpful to have some guidance on that.
No,
because the other thing too is us figuring out, like we were talking about on our previous call. So like, for example, if we were going to do a certain type of marketing campaign around Derby, what are the resources we have to do something for that? Who has time and bandwidth? That's got to get turned around really quickly, and then like the planning pieces around that too, in terms of if we make a recommendation out of the committee or the focus group, then how would that actually be executed and what kind of resources we would need.
Okay. Yeah, I'm taking copious notes, Zach and I. So we have a meeting, and Althea's on the call on Wednesday, and we will address those points and questions that you made, Jessica. And we've asked that, what's the, I don't want to say what's the end goal, because we know what the goal is of these committees, but I think it's harder for us as people. This is our day-to-day business, right? So this is something we're doing all the time. We're not under the metro government, but I think that we'll just keep updating and sending the reports, and include them in their in the inclusive report. But I do know, as I say that is frustrating to you as business people and co-chairs, and probably maybe even some of your committee members thinking, okay, we're thinking these ideas. So I think it's early now, you'll hear from the other groups that I think we're still have enough to talk about as we go through these next steps. Because you're right, being on the other side of the Brianna decision, that really affects us, and we talked about that in the entire hospitality. So I think there'll be definitely things for this group and the subgroups to tackle as we get to the other side of that, and what that looks like, and how we can move on from that point forward. So I don't have a hard, fast answer there, Jessica, but just know that we are asking that as well. And the other thing I think that adds on, and this will probably be as we go here to Eric, is that, and we're going to mention this, that we still are getting additional names to our groups. And I know that Stephanie is putting that at the bottom or the top of the list, so it's a new name, but it's not like you have to restart every single time because you have new people. And we just want those people to understand that they're new to the group and kind of where we are, just so you don't have to begin every time explaining what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right, well, good report and good meeting. And again, if you could just, high level notes, just let us know, and we're sending them on and updating those to the Metro committee meeting when Zach and I meet with them. So on Thursday when you do that. And then I guess at the end of this, if you have to jump off, if you miss anything, Jessica, I'll follow up with you with notes. We'll talk about next steps as we, for this entire group, as we see it with our subset groups.
Erin,
Okay.
can I jump
All
in
right.
just for a second?
Sure.
So internally, they've created documents for those of us on the Metro side to upload into this document key takeaways and information from our focus groups. So I'll be taking that information that you sent that gets circulated and uploaded. And what I will probably do is when I'm uploading it into this internal document, I may reach out
Okay.
to the co-chairs or the chairs really, and making sure that I am making sure that I have the correct information that you guys want uploaded. Okay.
We should send that to you because Zach, how did you do that the other day? Did you send that to Althea or?
Well, I was copied on. I'm
Oh,
copied. As long as I'm copied, that's fine.
okay.
That's
Okay.
fine. But I just wanted to make you guys aware that that is happening. And so the reason why they created this document so that they could at a glance look at it and see what we're doing at any stage.
Got
Now
it.
I've asked what is the final format that they want, you know, whatever our end result is, what is the format that you want to see that? So I'm still waiting on that answer.
Okay.
So we'll see.
All right. Thank you, Althea.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Granger, Eric, how did your sports? We saw your notes. Anything?
Yeah, I think it went fairly well. We met actually last week. Unfortunately, I had to cancel. We had originally had a schedule for the week before, and I had to cancel at the very last minute due to a work obligation that was going on. But so I had to reschedule a meeting, and we finally got it set up for last Tuesday. I want to thank Althea for joining us and lending support to our meeting. We had, I think it was 9 or 10 folks that joined us. And after some initial discussion just about the Build Back Better Together initiative, we got into just the actual discussion. And the first comments that I thought were important were that we have to all just work hard to give people confidence that their safety is the number one concern for attending events. And, especially until we have a vaccine in place, that we are learning best practices from other people and sharing those with each other so that we're able to operate in a safe way. There was a lot of discussion about what the new norm may look like for events. Because by design, we're promoters of mass gathering. In sports, we're promoters of contact and interaction of people. As Carl Schmidt said, we spit on people. And sometimes, in contact sports. And so, having to do that in a safe way is going to be the real challenge. And it's just crucial that we learn from each other best practices as we learn that new norm is going to be. We discussed quite a bit about partnering with JCPS and other organizations with creating access to event tickets, as well as creating access to venues that may not otherwise be able to use the various facilities that we have within the metro area. Whether it's a tiered rental structure at facilities for dates that are typically not being used, dark days, or it's working with groups to subsidize rental fees so they're able to use the facilities. Creating a pathway to management and supervisory roles was real important. That was discussed, especially with that equity lens that we're trying to keep that focus on, whether it's creating opportunities for job creation through education and internships, or just creating opportunities for folks to become supervisors and eventually managers. So we have a long-term success plan, not just short-term. There was quite a bit of discussion about the current status of downtown and the concerns that people, besides COVID, that attendees and even event producers will not want to have events downtown when there's doubts of safety, not to mention just the way it looks in general with buildings boarded up, et cetera, and how important it is that we get past the issues that are in front of us right now. We asked, there was a little bit of discussion about what we need from government leaders, and that was certainly number one focus was the keeping downtown safe, and also creating opportunities for startup funds towards venues becoming affordable for other groups that aren't always able to use the venues that we have. Some key takeaways that I had from the group was I had a lot of sports fans that not necessarily don't work in the sports industry. And so they had a lot of good thoughts, especially when it relates to amateur sports. There was a focus, or one person brought up, how can we create more focus on the non-revenue producing sports like cricket? And I didn't know there was even a cricket presence in Louisville, but apparently there is. And so how can we focus on those sports teams or sports outlets as well? Again, then just a big concern about people's comfort levels about coming to events, especially until we have a vaccine, and whether or not it's really even viable to try to put on large sporting events. Although we did discuss in detail about the success of the soccer stadium so far and having events, and how Governor Bashir has noted that is an example that others can follow, and we hope that they can learn from. And then just focus on equality. Needs to be not just access to events, but also a pathway to leadership roles. Those were the three biggest takeaways.
Gosh, as I hear you and Jessica report out, I'm sure you'll hear from David and Zach and I. Nicole, we missed you. We had a really good discussion, and I think all of us would agree we had about 23 people, but so similar, conversations. So as I hear this, and I'm going to kind of speak throughout, as I hear this, it does seem from our group that I don't think that we could really meet again until perhaps we got to the other side of the Brianna, because I feel like, and I'll let David and Zach chime in, because as Jessica said, we talked about the big wins in the industry with this group, and they really liked it. We talked about where we were from the diversity lens and the training from a hospitality, what we did as an organization, what we were doing as far as hiring someone to come in and audit. We will update them on what that looks like. We've actually hired somebody. We're going to be in the process of that. And very much like what Jessica said, how we're messaging out to the world, whether it be externally meaning outside Louisville, Kentucky, in that 3 to 4 hour radius, and what we were doing internally, with all of our members and partners and restaurants. I would say the majority of our people were probably like yours. Is we did have a lot of people that have some vested industry in the business, maybe a meeting planner. Actually, we had a great meeting planner that I have now moved over, and from that, she was very involved and engaged. She will now be part of the Black Tourism Council that we've created, so she has moved there. And there was maybe another one, Zach, that came from that when we talked about that. But a lot of them were about the business downtown and how we're going to survive, and the governor's orders with the COVID, and getting to the other side of this until we have a vaccine. But it was also about education, and that was one of the takeaways we didn't. And and then I'm gonna actually turn over to Zach. It was about education, and how we get people in the industry. So that was some of to me, our biggest takeaway, that there was a lot of people that want to be in our industry, that love, whether it be sports, whether it be hotels, and David gave him his update, and that we'll be working with JCPS and things that we're already doing, but in a bigger way once we have the resources. And to Jessica's point, resources meaning financial resources, but also doing it under the lens of the COVID and the diversity. So Zach, why don't you take it from there and talk about your report, and then David Green, what he talked about with hotels.
Yeah, I think you covered it really well. It was interesting, especially to hear the other groups talk about growth opportunities, because I know internships came up in our group, and getting with it. It was just interesting to see that people really immediately linked to education and opportunities for growth, and it sounds like everybody had that come up. So we were working on that before all this started, and it's good to know that we're heading in the right direction, and we'll continue that. But just having that equity lens, I think, is important, and just making sure that everyone has the equal opportunity to better themselves, to get the education they need, and to have opportunities to grow. Especially because I think, as we've said before all this, I know Cleo on our team has done a lot in this space, and in our industry, you can very quickly get pigeonholed as, well, that's only hospitality, that's only for folks cleaning hotel rooms, and everyone only thinks entry level for some reason in our industry. And so it was good to hear folks already thinking to get folks past that and into new opportunities. So that stood out to me most, Karen. I think you covered everything else really well. I mean, definitely the limbo that we're kind of feeling with the Breonna Taylor case, I think was felt throughout. Everyone's waiting for there to be some direction in that situation. And then, I think we talked a lot about where we had come from, and I think it's important to continue talking about the fact that while the hospitality industry has been the hardest hit and is still in kind of dire straits, we've come from total shutdown to seeing some attractions open, to seeing restaurants open, to seeing Louisville City FC hold a game, to there's been some small wins along there. And so I think it's important for our industry to remember that while we still have a long way to go, a very long way to go, we've seen several things happen that are better than where we were in April and May. So, David
may disagree with that.
Sure.
Yeah,
And I get that.
We have got to, we got to be able to put one foot in front of the other, and the first foot is getting businesses moving again. Because everything else we're talking about, diversity or inclusion or, growing the business, education or internships, none of that happens without getting business going again. And it's every week I have an eye-opening experience. Today I was talking with one of our previous senior sales people in our organization who's been on, furlough since March. And he came downtown and was in shock at what downtown looks like and feels like. Now, this is somebody that's born and raised here, but because they're not working, aren't necessarily downtown because there's no restaurant, there's no activity. But when they do come down, wow, how do you come down to this every day with the boarded windows and the weeds and the abandoned cars and the no traffic and no people? So for us, it's about first things first. How do we start getting some momentum? And there's things that are outside of our control. And I'm talking now through the lens of the Hotel Association, really, on a microcosm, but I think the destination as a whole and really the nation, but we've got to get some inertia. So our Hotel Association board meeting is on the 19th before our next general session meeting in September. And we are right now working on doing some sort of a progressive coffee break where we get people downtown that have worked in hotels or worked in the industry and hospitality, or some of our suppliers, and starting at a hotel and just having a coffee break and then walking from one hotel to the next, to the next, to the next, and hopefully get some followers from boards like this, from the mayor's office, from press, and just breathe a little bit of fun, a little bit of life into downtown. And we're debating whether it's a coffee break in the afternoon or whether it's an early happy hour or something like that, but we're going to do something like that. So we're trying to figure that out now and probably try to stage that. Timing is going to be difficult. Is it going to be before Derby? Is it going to be immediately after? Right now, the problem with kids in school, are they going to school? Are they not going to school? Or part going to school or part virtual? Yeah. But that's what we're talking about. So baby step, getting some people downtown and let people see that you can walk around. You can have a cup of coffee. You can be with people on the sidewalk, right? Some of these businesses are open. And then the next step is, like Zach said, letting the schools kind of get their feet underneath of them, get students in some sort of coursework, whatever it is, and then re-engaging with them on internships, adoption of a school, and participation as a hotel association, one of the academies. Letting people know that there are careers in hospitalities and hotels. It's not just about front desk agents and housekeepers. That there are people that like numbers and accounting. There are facilities management, those kids that like the trades, whether it's, I'm over here working on plumbing today in Starbucks with my director of engineering. There's jobs for people like that in hospitality and in hotels. Those that are in the culinary arts, those who like sales and marketing, right? Social media, all of these opportunities are there. So we're kind of building on that. But for us, I think our first step, and then we are going to use the toolkit that we all worked through last week. What was that, Thursday, I think?
Yes.
Using that toolkit in our decision-making as a hotel association, in our decision-making and planning and pathway, if you will. So those are kind of our three things. They're not sexy, if you will.
It's reality.
That's kind of, we got to get some motion. Once we can get a little bit of motion, you know, object in motion tend to stay in motion. Object at rest tend to stay at rest. Well, right now we're at rest, and we got to push against that and get some activity. So coffee break, a virtual, or not a virtual, but a progressive, you know, coffee break in the afternoon for people working downtown, or a happy hour or something is coming our way.
And David, let us know. I'll be at that board meeting next week, which we're doing that in person. I'm happy.
Correct. Yeah, no more virtual meetings for the hotel association.
Yep. So I'll be at that meeting, and so I'll come back from Louisville Tourism, and then I'll come back and share with you also things that we can share, like Jessica with the Bourbon experiences downtown, and Eric with US Sports, how we can get that messaging out. Because you're right. I mean, downtown is no one's walking around. I mean, you know, so the businesses that are open, and I saw where we lost another new business or not another new business, we lost a restaurant on 4th Street Live again today, because there's just not enough people down there. There's not the business people walking on the streets, and there's just very few of us that are working. And although I've expressed my thought on that, I will say to the businesses, the Downtown Partnership, and also to GLI, as I'm on that board, and I will say that the other side of that, it's a double-edged sword, that they'll say, number one, they don't want to come downtown until there is a vaccine and they feel safe in the COVID, and because the subtle unrest and not knowing. So, you know, we're all wondering how to tackle that. I think it came up in Jessica's report and Eric's and ours. So I understand. I mean, I don't like it, but there's very few people downtown working. So, Nicole, anything you want to talk about from Metros? How you've heard 3 different reports now. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking, you know, on one hand, I am glad to hear the themes, because I think it gives us a point in terms of where to focus. I think it's also important for us to think about what we control versus what we can't control. We can't control a vaccine, and if that's the goal, that may be a ways off. But thinking about what we can control, particularly around, you know, the ongoing concerns with safety. So, I mean, that has played out in my mind and sounds like certainly a big theme. I'm also, you know, encouraged by the work. I heard Zach mention small wins, and I recognize the sense of urgency that it's just not enough. So I guess that's what's in my mind right now, is just thinking about what we can control versus what we can't, and where we put our efforts as a city. You know, I'm downtown every day and I feel safe, but the reality is you have to have enough positive interaction and enough positive attraction, so to speak, to outweigh any real safety impact. So open and interested in ways that can inspire that balance, because until you have that, you're going to have a lot of folks who don't want to take the risk. And so I'm here to listen and learn.
Thank you. You know, it's interesting when you say, I think it was maybe Eric said tone deaf. So we're doing a couple things that, Nicole, you'll hear us at the next hospitality with David and Zach, that we can talk about some other wins that we're working on. And to include that is, you know, you've heard safety a lot in this conversation. So we have been very careful, very cautious, and very considerate and thoughtful on our messaging, because you, oh, I saw that little puppy. You allow dogs in the hotel. Very cute. But we're doing a campaign with masks, and we're showing that, and we're going to be very, you know, in our videos to make sure we have diversity in the videos wearing the mask. We're going to do them in different points around downtown. So people will say, you know, wear a mask and be safe downtown. So we're going to do that. And I think, David, your idea is great. I think that you probably have all seen, if you do something, you have to be so careful, because we may have the most positive messaging going out, and then there's people that are all on top of us saying, why would we come downtown? Downtown's not safe. You know, what are you, tone deaf? Do you think people, you know, so it's very careful and cautious how we do everything.
You know, the safety issue, and Nicole, I appreciate that you brought it up. It's been mentioned a few times, Karen. You know, like I don't feel unsafe downtown, but there's, you know, there's safety in numbers, right? The more people downtown, the safer. And right now it's disproportionate. People say, oh my gosh, there's so many more transient or those homeless, and that's just not the case.
I agree.
Probably the same number,
right?
But since that's the only people that are downtown that you see, it seems like it's just predominantly more, and it's just not the case.
Yeah, I think it's a case of perception becomes reality, and as more people are talking about it. But those boards in the windows, that's the biggest issue. I think, you know, I walk around downtown as well. I mean, I've been working pretty much every day. I was only like 2 weeks I worked from home. Otherwise, I've been downtown, and thank goodness for Cravings being open, or I wouldn't be able to eat. But yeah, you know, I feel safe walking around, and sometimes I go down to where if I hear there's a protest, I'll go down there and just kind of see what's going on, you know. But it's just the boards and the windows that look so bad. I know some businesses have worked hard to decorate them, to paint them, to make them look, you know, not as scary, if you will. And I don't know if that's the answer, or if it's just waiting until we can take those boards down. But to me, that's the biggest issue.
I saw
Yeah, and I'll just mention on that, because I've seen a number of comments about when are we taking the boards down, and we can just have everybody do that. And that's, you know, the big outstanding issue, of course, is that we have to get on the other side of some of the very real political and volatile issues we have going on around racial justice. And until we do that, you know, there are many of us that can't take those boards down. I mean, like from the distillers' side, you know, we are having regular visits from the fire department to come up with all the contingency and emergency plans, because if even one of our buildings goes up in flames on, you know, downtown, it's going to be a big issue. Similarly, for restaurants and bars, if they've got a bar full of bottles of alcohol, as soon as they breach that window and that perimeter and get in and can light every single one of those bottles of alcohol on fire, you know, you escalate things very quickly. And so for those of us in particular, it's not even just damage and theft, but the fire risk. You know, the boards are going to be there until things calm down downtown and we have more stability, which I think is why we're all talking about that's such a threshold issue for all of us, right?
And I completely agree. And I'm not being critical about the reasons for putting the boards up at all. I can tell you, I've got 80 sheets of plywood sitting in our loading dock right now that my staff's got a plan to put up in front of the KFC Yum Center if we get noticed that we need to do that. I'm not criticizing those who have put them up or the reasons for that. I'm just saying that's probably our biggest deterrent, people being safe to come downtown.
And I will
Yeah,
tell
it doesn't look great. We know that.
yeah. And it is, I'm on 2 or 3 calls a week with the mayor's office and GLI and Downtown Partnership, and David's been on a couple of those. You know, the community saying, you know, you all need to take your boards down and we'll be a welcoming city. And we as Louisville Tourism, listen, we would love nothing more, but we understand why. So we can't, you know, in our industry, people say, well, people don't want to come downtown to see boards. Well, I understand what Jessica said. I've heard and talked to several distillers, and I understand that. And then a lot of the businesses that are boarded up downtown, they're not working anyway. They're working remotely and have been working remotely since January. So that's why I say, I think on the front of this call, I feel like there's certain things we as our subset groups in this, and this hospitality, sports, and Bourbonism will be able to tackle once we get to the other side of this decision. And then maybe people will have that comfort knowing what's ahead of us. I don't know. All right, well, I appreciate what we'll do is we're gonna give our report update. We have a meeting on Wednesday. Zach and I will give the updates, and David, for you and Zach and I will probably wait until after that meeting and wait till we have this actual video, because a lot of hours we really talked on the front end with our group. So I don't want you to have a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting until you have very specific things and it works with your schedules. And we'll let the Metro know that. But as you have meetings, if you could just send us your notes, and then probably in a couple weeks, I'll bring us all back together again as chairs. Althea, anything you want to add or?
No, I think that's all. Again, we're just on Metro's side, they're putting together these spreadsheets and trying to just, you know, compile everything as we go along so we could have a brief, at a glance, look at where people are.
Okay, thank you. And I do agree. I think David said we all had, and I appreciate all of you able, and I know you had yours separate, Nicole, with Metro Council, but we all had our training with Kendall, which I thought was very interesting, very enlightening. He has provided that toolkit, and we'll be sending that on to, it's really just for our purpose, but we can talk about that at our next chair meeting or our next subset meeting with our group. So I appreciate you all able to pivot very quickly and have that meeting last week. Zach, anything else? Anybody else have anything?
I have just one question, Karen.
Yeah, sure.
Can you tell me a little bit about, you know, hospitality and tourism's as an industry effort to connect with advocacy groups, Black Lives Matter? Have there been any of those discussions with community leaders, just in the way of, I don't know, reconciliation as well as understanding, enhanced understanding? Has that happened?
I can say that I've not, I mean, I'm on several meetings with, you know, GLI, and I talked to the mayor's office, but I've not been involved in any of those meetings with those key leaders. I think that we have made, Nicole, what we are doing for tourism as far as training, as far as a statement, as far as the Black Tourism Council, as far as our audit, we have let the world know, meaning our world in Louisville know that tourism has embraced that. When I say tourism, I don't mean Louisville, I mean tourism, Eric, and I mean David, and I mean Jessica. We have all embraced that and really talked about what we're doing, but nobody has asked us to the table to discuss next steps. I will say that I'm on, which I think will probably get, may have the potential of getting a bit controversial. I don't know, we'll see. I've been asked by Louisville Forum, you know, they have those lunches. And, Sarah and I, and it was Sarah and myself, and then I just heard Ja'Cory is going to be on there as well. And the topic is finding a balance. Can the push for racial justice and a vibrant downtown coexist? Well, I absolutely think they can. And I think everybody in this, this group would say that. And I think you have to embrace what we're doing, and it's not just a one-off, it's continuing. But on the other side of that, I think, and I don't know where you're going with that question, but for instance, National Street Rod is coming in. You all have seen it. You know, they're coming in, they're going to be here when we're going to have a press conference Wednesday, and they're going to be here Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And they started getting some threats from people saying, we're going to come and we're going to, please don't do your event. Don't do, you know, it's, don't, in other words, don't celebrate like it was a celebration. Don't celebrate in this time of social injustice. And these are just rich people with cars. Well, first of all, they're not rich people with cars. And my whole thing in Celebrate, I want to say we have 60,000 employees. Do we not want our economy to come back? Because that's part of it. So we got to really be careful on how we couch that, because we're not part of the problem. We want to be part of the solution, and we want to do the right things getting there. But I think we just need to keep advocating for ourselves. I don't know who we could advocate with a group that would say that. I mean,
well, and that's where I was going with that, Karen, quite frankly, is what percentage of folks who are very committed and who are out, you know, right now on the street, what percentage of those folks understand the 60,000 jobs and understand who comprises those 60,000 jobs? And again, because I believe in that balance, I'm just interested in like partnership opportunities, because I think in a lot of ways it is working toward the same goal. Or at least I'm optimistic enough to believe that. So that was where I was going with that question, is for that exact purpose. It's not just about the people with the cars. Right. It's about the people who work at KEC and the people who do Uber and the people who, I mean,
who work at the restaurant and, you know, yeah. And you're right. I mean, we're trying to, in a very, again, thoughtful way, get that message out. I talk to media probably once or twice a week. I can't control what media will pick up after I say it. We've done a couple editorials. Again, we can't pick up when they say it. David's been on a couple meetings with the mayor and a lot of business leaders. But I will tell you, and I don't say this to be a downer on the end of it, but we are the worst industry hit, and we have a tough fall and winter ahead of us. And these restaurants that keep closing, and hotels, and people that have no jobs. I mean, downtown won't look the same, not because of the boarded windows, is because we won't have that thriving community that we had 6 months ago. And I wish business leaders could kind of wrap their head around that and embrace it as well. But I don't know, Eric, David, you know, yeah. Jessica, you want to?
I'll chime in a little bit. You know, we have to be careful. We've heard all our life, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. But in today's world of social media, listen, I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but there's people that are just trolling and just want to be naysayers. And that is a very, very, very small percentage of the population. Those people that are, you know, in the feeds of social media and saying, well, how can you do something like that during this time? Well, how can we not? Right? So we have to stop giving them the bully pulpit and realize that getting this hotel open, keeping these restaurants, getting National Street Rod Association in, puts people to work at the convenience store, the gas station, the suburban restaurants, the downtown hotels, every place. And so cooler heads have got to prevail here.
Right,
you know, so what are we doing for a partnership, you know, with the Hotel Association? And in September, we'll have a speaker at that event. So we put a list of names together that are relevant right now, right? Is it, you know, is it David James? Is it the mayor? Is it the deputy mayor? Is it Kendall Boyd to talk about the toolkit at our September meeting? That can help kind of enlighten us and give us some energy and direction on how as an association we can learn and become better and more comfortable and fluent in the ways we need to move forward. So that's kind of how we're working on it, Nicole, but I appreciate that question.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, just
stop pandering to those people just that I don't know, live in their basement and just want to troll and sling mud on social media.
Yeah, no, and I think, you know, one of the things and I don't know what community leaders would say, but if real change, if that's what we're seeking is real change and reform, that's going to come when we learn to integrate advocacy into all the things that we do so that we don't burn out and that we don't, burn others out with us, quite frankly, in the way of just people trying to make a living. And so, I'm interested in what advocates think about that, because I really do, again, in the spirit of balance, believe that if we're going to have staying power, we've got to be able to integrate those things. So something to think about.
Yeah, it is something to think about. I agree. And I think we just keep saying what we do, what we've said, and keep saying it in a very positive way, and just hope. I mean, I really do think we've been a vocal force, restaurants and attractions. I just think the dots have not been connected yet, unfortunately. Jessica, anything else before we let you go?
No, nothing from me.
All right, thank you. Eric, anything else?
No, well, thank you.
Althea? All right, guys, thank you all very, very much. I appreciate you very much. Talk soon. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.